Hey, everybody. As you've kind of been watching these virtual Q&As, you've gotten familiar with my face. I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers here at SF DocFest. We're excited to have you here. And as you can see, we're still kind of doing the hybrid thing where we have live in-person screenings at the Roxy and also here virtually. So thanks again for joining us. We're lucky enough to have kind of done the West Coast premiere of this really great film, Song of Salt. And we have the directors here, Emma Bayada and Nicholas Snyder. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Very cool. I think maybe a good place to start is how did you first hear about this town and knew it's where you wanted to spend part of your life to kind of making this really cool documentary?
Yeah, so we were just out in Death Valley for a weekend trip in, I guess, the end of 2016, and we were driving back to LA. And after like miles and miles of driving through nothingness in the desert, we came across Trona, and it was sunset, and we saw this giant, like triangular concrete church that had this huge cross jutting into the air. Somehow it didn't make it into the film, and then in the background we saw like all of these. We saw the plants churning smoke into the air, and all of these abandoned houses, and we were just really curious about what the place was. So we got out and we took some pictures, but we were like, get back in the car, lock the doors. We were kind of scared of the place. But then it kind of just kept hanging around in our mind over the next few months, and we decided to go back and talk to some people, and everyone is really welcoming and kind. And yeah, I just wanted to tell the story of what life was like in this town.
If you spend enough time driving across the country, you eventually pass through these places that you're kind of like, who lives here? And what is it like to live here? And this was one of the most striking instances of that I've ever experienced. And yeah, it just stuck with us, and we kept talking about it until it eventually nagged us to the point that we had to go back and see who did actually live there and what was it like.
Well, and that kind of raises two questions. One is, as as your kind of initial feeling of like, okay, get in the car and lock the doors, is that, as you started meeting these people, many of them you'd mentioned are nice, is that were there any kind of hesitancy about being part of a documentary? How did you kind of share your vision for the film that they wanted to kind of get on board and share their lives in that way?
I would say that overwhelmingly people were pretty open to participating in the film. There was really only one person who really didn't want us to make a film. Um, Strangely enough, I just bought a Trona sweatshirt at the thrift store that has his last name on the back of it, which is kind of weird. But yeah, people were generally pretty open and wanting to tell their story. I think a lot of people had represented Trona in some kind of like doomsday-ish ways, and maybe they could just tell that we had pure intentions. And we kept going back, year after year, and they were like, "You're still here." Um, we
Yeah,
trust.
it's
We built
it's
trust.
been it's been used in it's been like a set piece for films in the past, and is particularly um, portrayed as a kind of post-apocalyptic or alien place, which it definitely has both of those qualities. Um, but for the most part, they were just glad that someone was seeing them.
That's cool. Well, I think that the kind of care that you took is kind of seen in that film. And so you mentioned that this film was made over several years. So did you all ever live in Trona, or did you kind of go for like short stays? Like what was that kind of that process like? And then also how did you kind of creatively approach it, of the sense of like, what was the kind of visual language of what were you kind of influenced about how you wanted to capture this special place?
Mm. I think we initially wanted to live there for about 4 months. We even spoke with a few people who own properties there, and it just never worked out. We eventually met a woman who we came to love very dearly, who ended up being in the film. Her name is Mary Crandall. And after about the second time we met, she handed us the keys to her house. And she traveled a lot because her children lived in Bakersfield and in Oregon. And even if she wasn't there, our house or her house was open to us. And in that way, we really felt like we were a part of the community. And yeah, I mean, we probably went there every weekend, every other weekend for about 3.5, 4 years. And we didn't always know what our intention was. We would just go there with a camera and see what we captured.
Yeah. And in terms of the visual language, I think that was what was clearest to us when we started the film. We were, we love films by Frederick Wiseman. We love like more European documentaries that are pretty patient and, have shots locked off on tripods and have this like oscillating sense of immersion and observation. So the aesthetic was pretty defined for us when we started. It was more the story that we had to like poke around and find. But we were thinking a lot about the idea of compression and expansion when making this film. So it's actually an idea borrowed from Frank Lloyd Wright. The idea that like you walk through these small, low doorways, and then you go into a room that has really high ceiling, and it sort of produces this, things feel small for a moment, and then it opens up, and there's this feeling of release. And so we kind of tried to achieve that with, especially in editing of the film.
Neat. I'll have to give it a while. The film comes across in a really unique way. I'll have to kind of watch the film again with that in mind. It's always interesting about how filmmakers kind of craft their pieces of art. What do you think? We associate the desert and particularly like Death Valley with these extremes. And so, how did you kind of navigate just the weather and the kind of what we might feel as outsiders kind of as harsh climate? How did you do that and like I guess maintain your persistence in telling the story and capturing it?
Yeah, I think having access to Mary's house was huge because it was right in town, and we could go out and we could shoot for like 30 minutes in the intense sun, and then we could go take shelter in front of Mary's swamp, in her den.
We took lots of naps right in front of Mary's swamp kohler. They don't have air conditioners, they have swamp kohlers, which like runs on some sort of water cooling system.
I would say oh, sorry.
If you'll notice, the first shot of the skull, you see the sign that says "Welcome back" to the students. It was the first day of school that we filmed, and the temperature was 109 degrees, and that was pretty typical about half of the year.
Although in the summer, I would say that we probably went a little bit less, or we filmed exclusively inside because no one was outside in the summer. So a lot of our indoor scenes happened in the height of the summer.
And after spending this time there, like, what's your takeaway? Is there kind of a universal reason why folks decide to continue to live in Trona? And if they had the option, do you think they would want to be somewhere else?
I think it depends for different people. You saw maybe at the end of the film that some people did choose to leave primarily for employment purposes, but I also hope that it came through in the film that like the community is really strong, and they don't get a lot of support from government agencies. They don't have a grocery store. Like they really need to rely on each other. And so I think that community feeling and knowing that people in town are looking out for each other is what holds them there. And even in Ridgecrest, which is like 40 minutes away, it's the next closest town, you don't get that feeling at all. There's still probably only like 30,000 people that are in that small city, but it's nowhere near what Trona is in terms of having like a real heart and soul. So I think that's what keeps people there.
And some of the people just live for it. It's such a unique place that when they go elsewhere, they feel really out of place. And so they come back. And, that's not the case for everyone, but, Mary, the woman who we stayed with, she was a Trona lifer. She had shoes that had Trona painted all over them. She just loved it. And there are so many people in town that have that same mindset where they just absolutely love being where they're at because it's such a unique place, such a unique existence.
Now, I think that definitely comes across. I think it's testimony to film in the sense of at the end of watching it, I was like, okay, I need to head out there. What do have the folks in the film had a chance to see it yet, and what was their kind of reaction to it?
Yeah, we screened it for them. They were the first people to see it. Emma set it all up. We rented a large inflatable screen and had it shipped out to the high school stadium. And yeah, most of the town showed up, and they were the first people to watch the final version who hadn't actually been involved in the post-production process. And they responded really well to it. It was a beautiful thing.
Neat. Well, I can imagine, just getting kind of a mirror shown up, but through the kind of lens of filmmakers would be really neat. Well, as I kind of remind our audiences is that, we're lucky enough that filmmakers share their films with us. And often this is very early in the life cycle of a film. So what's the way that we can kind of help kind of be your grassroots street team to kind of spread the word about this cool film that we saw and even follow your kind of future endeavors?
Yeah, well, we're still looking for distribution. So I think that would be a big way if anyone has any leads on how to get it out to wider audiences, that would be great. We're pursuing like national broadcast distribution, and would also love to get it on some sort of big streamer so that people can watch it in their homes. Yeah, and then you can find us on Hierophant_films on Instagram and our website hierophantfilms.com.
Yeah, just if you like the film, post it in your stories and tag us on Instagram, and word of mouth is a big thing, so
yeah,
we welcome it.
Very cool. Well, thanks again, Nicholas and Emma, and really appreciate you sharing the film with us.
thank you so much.
Thanks for showing the film.
Oh yeah, most definitely.